Happy Halloween. I hope you're ready for some scary stories. Japan is a country layered in beauty, traditions, and ghosts. I've been to Japan probably more than 30 times in my life. My mom is Japanese and we would go every year, especially during the summer times. I heard a lot of spooky stories about ghosts, demons, unexplained events, but the creepiest ones are from real experiences. Mine, my family's, and probably most traumatically from my grandparents' neighbor who worked the graveyard shift at a hospital morgue in Tokyo. Tonight, I will share some of my spookiest real ghost stories straight from Tokyo. Some will give you chills, and some will make your stomach turn. But once you hear them, you'll never look at Japan the same way again. Happy Halloween, bitch. Tokyo is a massive city. There are over 37 million people in the greater Tokyo metro area. And yet, tucked between these giant skyscrapers and neon lights, there are tiny cemeteries that dot the city. In Tokyo, cemeteries are primarily organized around family grave sites, which hold cremated remains due to limited space and tradition. So unlike in America, cemeteries in Tokyo can be really small, compact, and often sit right next to residential neighborhoods. One summer when I was a teenager, I must have been 17 or 18, my youngest sister dared me to cross this fairly large cemetery that we were walking past in exchange for 200 yen, which I think translates to $1.50. At first, it was quiet, which was surprising because we were so surrounded by people and it was the middle of the day. The buzzing of cicadas seemed to cut out all at once. It was almost as if a volume was turning down on all of the outside noise as I was walking closer and closer to the middle of the cemetery. And then I felt it. Hands, limp, bony fingers starting to slither up my shoulders and grip the back of my shirt. It was really eerie and gross feeling. I even felt these little fingers pulling at my hair, and I was getting more and more grossed out and feeling like this isn't right and this is not a good experience. I froze and I started hearing whispering behind me, and not just one whisper, but many somethings whispering to me, low voices, as if these spirits or entities or whatever were trying to speak. And in that moment, I knew that if I stayed there for a minute longer, I would understand what they were saying, and that would be bad news. So I bolted. Even now, more than a decade later, I still get shivers remembering those cold fingers just gripping at my body, just touching me. It was just such an eerie, bizarre feeling. When I went home that day, I told my grandmother, and she told me this: never talk to a ghost, because they will ask you to do something for them. Maybe find a person, deliver a message, maybe find something. But the truth is, you can't help ghosts. Ghosts are dead and they are not of this world anymore. Because if you do agree to help a ghost, they will follow you for the rest of your life. Thank you, Obajan, for that one. I'll never talk to a ghost again. My own mother had an experience with a ghost when she was 12 years old. One morning, she said she woke up paralyzed. She couldn't move her arms, she couldn't move her legs. And then she noticed this warm light above her head. She looked up and she saw her grandfather smiling down at her. The strange thing, he died before she was 1 year old. She had only known him through faded photographs. And unlike my experience in the cemetery, hers wasn't terrifying. She remembers a feeling of being warm and loved and in a sweet, gentle light. She remembers this experience with fond memories and feeling safe and loved. In Japan, encounters with ghosts aren't really questioned the way that they are here. They're accepted as a part of reality. Spirits exist, and it's not really up for debate. It's taken as fact. This is where things get a little bit darker, actually a lot darker. So across the street from my grandparents' house in Tokyo, we had these neighbors. The man of the house worked the graveyard shift at a morgue in a hospital in Tokyo. His job, normal stuff, paperwork, transporting bodies, receiving corpses from the upper floors. From 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. No joke. Night after night. One night, he was sitting in the office in the basement where the morgue is, and he was doing paperwork. He was called on the phone to pick up a body from the 12th floor of the hospital. So he went to the elevator doors, and he was surprised that when the doors opened, there was a woman standing in the corner. He thought it was odd, since he was at the lowest level of the building. But there she stood, silent and waiting. He asked her what floor she wanted to go to, and without speaking, she motioned that she needed to go to the 6th floor. So he pressed the button and up they went. At the 6th floor, the door opened and she went on her way, and he continued on his way up to the 12th floor. But when he went to the room to pick up the body, he pulled back the sheets and he saw that it was that same woman that he saw in the elevator. I asked him, did you know it was a ghost? Was there any sign or signal to you that this woman was not alive? And he said no, she looked solid. But he did think it was odd that she did not speak to him. Another night, he was working in the office, and all of a sudden, he started feeling this searing heat just hitting the back of his head. And he knew that there was something behind him. He definitely felt something, a presence. And so he turned around full knowing that what he was about to see was not going to be nice. So he slowly turned around in his office chair, and there, floating in the corner of his office, was this giant head, just a giant floating red head floating in the corner of his office. And it was looking down at him like, argh. Its face was twisted in rage and glaring down at him. He bolted out the door as fast as he could, and he felt the head turn to follow, watching him as he's running out his office. He said that after this experience, he just ran out of the building and then called one of his buddies, who came and stayed with him the rest of the night because it was just too scary. It was a very negative, angry kind of energy that was like in that floating red head. This next section should come with a trigger warning because they do have to deal with really gross body horror stuff. So if you're squeamish, or if you don't want to hear about what happens to the human body after you die, then maybe just skip this video. So some of these stories are hard to stomach. I'll start with like the easier stuff. In the morgue, he would be moving bodies and bodies would just twitch. He said it was pretty regular that someone's arm would just like fling itself over the edge of the tray that would carry the body. He would be there at night by himself a lot of the time. And he said there were 2 times where bodies would just sit up and then he'd have to go and like crank their bodies back down. That's just so scary. And I know this is biological, the muscles firing off residual signals, but in the dead of night in a silent hospital morgue, this is completely terrifying. My neighbor also described to me what happens in the crematorium. Most people are cremated in Japan, so he would tell me like what the actual process was like. When the incinerator is lit, the first thing to start burning is your face and your eyes and your lips, because that's where all the oils are in your body. So he would look inside and he would see like flames shooting out of these dead bodies' eyes and out of their mouths. He had some buddies who worked in the crematorium that the hospital worked with, and he would see this with his own eyes. The last part of the body to burn is actually your organs, because that's where all the juicy stuff is. And for larger bodies, they would actually stop the incineration process and they would get this long iron pole and stir up the intestines and organs just to get the process going along faster. So they would pause, stir up the organs, and then reignite the incinerator and just let the body just keep burning. My neighbor also told me about his earlier jobs. He would clean up the messes from these subway suicides. If you go to Tokyo now, a lot of times you'll see barriers between the platform and the subway tracks. And the reason that those barriers exist is because people throw themselves on the tracks to kill themselves. And it's really sad, but it actually happens quite a bit. After these really brutal and abrupt deaths, he was the guy who was cleaning up the mess. He would describe to me how he would go onto the platform and go down into the tracks with a plastic bag and these long chopsticks called nagahashi, which I use for cooking. So like I'll be frying up my stuff with my nagahashi, but he would use these long chopsticks to pick up these little bits of bone fragments or brain or skin or hair, and he would just be putting it into this bag. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. That was his job. Japan has a huge bath culture. That's one of my favorite things about Japan is like the onsens and the inns that you can go to and how there is just such this culture around bathing and cleanliness. Every home in Japan usually has a big soaking tub in it. In the 60s, they had these soaking tubs that would heat up and heat up and heat up. There's no like automatic off button. You couldn't just set the timer. It'll be like, okay, I want it to stop when the water is 110 degrees, which is really hot. This poor old man, he had a heart attack in his bathtub while it was heating and he died. And the bathtub did not turn off because this was a bathtub in the 60s. So it kept heating and his body was getting boiled, literally boiled in this water. No one checked in on him. So his body was boiling for 2 whole days. My neighbor said the entire apartment smelled like soup stock. He said that the muscles slipped away from the bone like meat. I didn't eat meat for days after hearing this. Japan is full of ghostly traditions. The number 4 is avoided because it sounds a lot like shi, like death, which is how you say death. My mom taught us when we were little that if we see a hearse, we have to cover our thumbs because if you don't, your mother will die. Every August during Obon, we burn sticks so that the ancestors floating above our homes can see where we are and bless us and check in on us. Japan is full of all these creepy stories and I just love it so much. From my own brush with spirits in Tokyo to my grandparents' neighbor telling us the most crazy real stories. These stories don't just scare me, they also show me that the world is just so interesting. There's just so much going on. Thank you for sticking with me through the chills. I usually make videos about art, so I don't really know what this is about, but I just thought it'd be fun to do a spooky story. So if you want to see the other things I do, you can see my next video where I talk about selling my art in Portland, Oregon's largest indie store. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you can sleep after this.